Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of The Chocolate Life Live. My name is Clay Gordon, and I'm your host and moderator today. I'm also the creator of thechocolatelife.com, and I would like to thank all of the members of The Chocolate Life for becoming sponsors of today's episode. If you're not currently a member, you can go to The Chocolate Life and become a member, either free or premium member, and help support the work that we're doing here. Today, we're going to be talking about a new bit of news. It's a bit of news that showed up in my feed last week, or earlier this week, and I've been talking with some people about it. And that's about some accusations which are being leveled against Olam Nigeria and perhaps their subsidiary Olam Food Ingredients. And we're going to get into that right after I mention the fact that right now, this is the homepage of thechocolatelife.com. You can go there. I create a post for every single one of these live streams, and this is what it looks like. So here's, you can go just look for this image about Nigeria, and you can scroll down. You can find links to watch. You can also find an overview of the episode and resources that I will be talking about during the course of the episode. So please go to the Chocolate Life, and you can follow along, or you can take a look at the page afterwards. And also, those of you who are watching live, if what you can do is you can go into the comments or live chat in YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook and send me a little quick note about where in the world you are connecting from. What I can do is I can get that up on the screen. So I don't need to know if you're connecting from YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. That I will see, but just, where in the world? Is it here in the United States? Is it overseas? Let me know what it is that's going on. All right, with that out of the way, let's jump right into it. So the challenge that I want to talk about and is that recently, and we'll go down here to the episode overview. Recently, Olam Nigeria and its subsidiaries have been accused by the department, the state security department or the state security service, of perpetrating a financial fraud. And that financial fraud is to the tune of multiple billions of dollars. It is alleged that more than $30 billion was involved in this fraud. And the fraud specifically had to do with the way foreign currency transactions were handled. So foreign exchange transactions were handled. And if you go and look at the episode overview, what you'll do is you'll find a little bit of history. And I think for me, one of the things that was interesting about doing the research on this topic was that I was aware of Olam International is um, one of the largest cocoa traders in the world. They're also one of the largest agricultural commodity traders in the world. But I didn't know anything about the history of the company. And so, among other things, I learned that it grows out of a company that was originally founded in India sometime in the mid 1800s. They opened an operation in Nigeria that was primarily focused on selling household goods and electronics in Nigeria. Right. But then sometime in the 1980s, the Nigerian government, the Nigerian central bank, changed the way companies, international companies with subsidiaries in Nigeria, had to account for foreign exchange transactions. And this is where things started to go south. So originally, the Nigerian offshoot of this company is called Kewaram Chanrai. Um, was about working with non-oil related profits. And what is happening here as a result of the accusation, the behavior that led to the accusations, was about the fact that what Olam in Nigeria was doing was misrepresenting the flow of funds, and then basically hiding from the Nigerian government these transactions. And that's my understanding of it. And I apologize if I'm not getting the full detail associated with it. That is my understanding of it. They were round tripping and perhaps, again, misaccounting for the foreign exchange transactions and doing that with with entities primarily in the oil industry in Nigeria. The monies were supposed to go to the Nigerian central bank, and they were supposed to be invested in the local economy, not exported, not removed to foreign countries. And so this is what it is that Olam is being accused of. Now, we should note is that Olam Food Ingredients vigorously deny that they have done anything wrong. And at least in the United States, there is a presumption of innocence associated with this. But nonetheless, this is a stunning revelation. Olam is now domiciled, its headquarters, its corporate headquarters in Singapore. They're listed on the Singapore Stock Exchange. And over the course of the last week or so, 2 weeks since the announcement was made, their stock has pretty much taken a beating. Now, OFI, so Olam Food Ingredients, was supposed to take an IPO sometime, I believe, last year, 2022. That IPO has been rescheduled. It has nothing to do, the rescheduling the IPO has nothing to do with the current kerfuffle. It had to do with, I think, post-COVID related supply chain issues and uncertainty about where the market was, especially with respect to what was going on with the war in Ukraine. But nonetheless, Olam, their shares have taken more than a 7% hit. I don't know where they are now compared to what happened on the trading day when the accusations were announced. But it's really interesting that Olam's major investors include the Singapore Government Private Investment Fund, a company called Temasek Holdings, and also Mitsubishi Corporation in Japan. You go, Mitsubishi, isn't a heavy industry? They make cars, they make tractors, they make lots of things, including air conditioning units. Why is what does Mitsubishi have to do with an agricultural commodities trading company? And it turns out, going way back in my history, I learned that Mitsubishi helped finance some of the earliest cocoa trades of Scharfenberger. So Mitsubishi would buy the cocoa, they would buy enough cocoa, like a container or more. They'd warehouse it for Scharfenberger in the United States, and then Scharfenberger would pull beans out of inventory as they needed them. So Mitsubishi was financing the Scharfenberger's cocoa bean inventory. And so it turns out that this is a business, commodities trading, that the Mitsubishi, I suppose you might call it a keiretsu, right, which is this big holding company. It's one of the activities they do. And Mitsubishi is actually one of the larger cocoa traders in Japan, right? So we find a little bit about the history. This was really interesting for me, right? I knew about Olam, but I really hadn't thought about what their history was, what came to. So understanding this aspect of it was really interesting. And what you'll do is you'll find that I've done a sort of high level overview of that history. I've copied in some text from the Wikipedia article on Kelrong Chenrai, and then also some more information about what it is that's going on right now. So before I go to the next point of this, what I really want to do is give a quick shout out to Mark, who maybe Yuri, who are connecting from Blue Spruce Chocolates in Colorado. I want to do a quick shout out and saying this coming Tuesday, so just a couple of days from now, we're going to be doing an introduction to the 20th anniversary tasting. For not the 20th, the 2023 Craft Chocolate Challenge tasting. We're doing a virtual tasting, and Mark is going to be one of the guests on that. So that's really cool. And then I also want to say hello to Mike King at Encore Coffee in Kansas City, and they're going back and forth. So I want to let you know they're talking to each other about bars they're sharing, and I think this is a really wonderful interaction between people who have connected here, and also both Mike and Mark were their companies, Blue Spruce and Encore Coffee, were winners in the 2023 Craft Chocolate Challenge, and their bars will be tasted during the virtual tasting event, which is going to be taking place on Sunday, November 12th. So just wanted to do a quick shout out to both of those today and thank them for being a part of this stream, and then also being regular visitors here. So just, the article, which is on thechocolateLife.com, goes through a bunch of this goes through a bunch of this history, right? Now, what is interesting is that having spoken with people who are aware of some of the players involved and might have access to some information, have told me that it is the accusations are quite likely ones that could be proven in a court of law if the suit were ever to make it to court. Now, there is a director of Olam Nigeria who's posted a 1 million naira, it's about 1.32 million US dollars appearance bond. And that's gone into the Nigeria Central Bank where it's being held. Um, and But it remains to be seen what will happen if there's a settlement. It's alleged that there are over $30 billion, which are a part of this. It's unknown if any of that money is still in Nigeria, or if it has been expatriated. Is it in Singapore? Is it some offshore financial havens? This is speculation on my part. I don't know, but there is some speculation that the money is no longer in Nigeria. So, if there is a settlement agreement, if there is a consent decree associated with the settlement agreement, we will see how much money is involved, and then how the money will be used and dispersed. So is it going to, for example, the Cocoa Research Institute, and they're going to manage how it's used, because this, for the most part, related, I believe, to cocoa transactions. Olam is also very heavily involved in cashew and shea nut and other kind of agricultural commodities exports in Nigeria. So, I want to go back and I want to go back and revisit the fact that I was in Nigeria about this time in 2021. I went to the town of Ecom, which is in Cross River State. There is a project to build a very, very large cocoa process facility in Cross River State, and I was there to help present the project to political leaders in Cross River State and originally perhaps even to the Nigerian president. But what I did have the opportunity while I was there to speak to the president of the Cocoa Producers Union, and I got a little bit of understanding about sort of the political and trade dynamics that are happening within the state of Cross River, especially as associated with Olam. And one of the things I was told was that, and again, this is something that I was told, so it's hearsay. I didn't have an opportunity because of the circumstances of my being there to be able to personally go and review this, is that Olam representatives, I don't know that Olam as a company knows this, but Olam representatives are alleged to have engaged in some predatory lending practices. So what they will do is they will offer to cocoa farmers maybe some micro lending in the form of cash, micro lending in the form of, giving them fertilizers and pesticides, things like that, and then on the promise that the cocoa farmer will in fact sell the cocoa to them. Now, when the farmer comes at the end of the season and presents the cocoa, obviously Olam is in a very, very highly leveraged bargaining position. And so there are reports that the farmers are not actually receiving what it was that they were promised when they agreed to accept the loan of pesticides, fertilizers, and the like, and that this practice is fairly widespread. So this is obviously very, very concerning, and I have heard of similar lending practices in other countries. It's a way that a big company can, as I say, create and then leverage an unfair bargaining position. And those of you who followed me here on the Chocolate Life will know that the definition of one of my definition of being unethical is taking unfair advantage of the bargaining position, of a leveraged bargaining position, just taking unfair advantage. All right. What this opens up, right? And I think this is an interesting aspect of this, is one wonders if this is the only country in the world where Olam is engaging in these practices. I don't know one way or the other. I'm asking the question, if they're doing it in one country, would there be an incentive to do it in another country? Yeah, and are they the only company who are engaging I mean, in these kinds of practices around the world? So if Olam is doing it, are there other traders, not just in cocoa, but in other agricultural commodities that are doing this? And so we run into the situation where these practices might be keeping farmers in poverty. There might be thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, given the range of commodities that companies like Olam trade in countries. So there might be tens or hundreds of thousands of farmers involved in Nigeria, and then perhaps millions of farmers around the world. And this is, I think this is, excuse me, part of my larger concern about this is that, I mean, is this the end of it? Because are the financial manipulations that Olam is accused of perpetrating in Nigeria, are these the only instances of it? I don't know. I think it is deserving of some additional scrutiny around the world. I'm not in a position to do that, but I think that there are other organizations which could be in a position to do something like that. Now, the thing that really, really bothers me about this, and it's the thing that I want to talk about, and for people who are going to be watching this who are in the United States, one of the things that we know is that here in the United States, talking about the current political situation with respect to the upcoming elections, especially the presidential election, that what we do is we find that the media are not reporting aspects of it, or very, very partisanly taking one side or the other, obviously. And if you go to YouTube and you go take a look at how I have categorized this particular post, it's listed under news and politics. And what is really interesting to me, and this is something that the Chocolate Life has focused on more over the course of the last, the Chocolate Life Live especially has become focused on more and more over the last year, are these issues of reporting about situations, not exactly as big as this one, but situations that do not appear to be covered elsewhere in the trade media. So what I did was I went to a number of trade media sites, and we took a look at Olam here on Confectionery News. And what we do is we find that they've got the most recent article in Confectionery News was the 6th of September. I don't know if it's timed to a specific issue of the magazine, the virtual issue of the magazine, but it will be interesting to see, and this is something that I will follow up on, if any kind of news about the Nigerian situation shows up on Confectionery News, on the Confectionery News website. So we've got some new AI tool. It looks like they got dragon fruit there. Olam Group is looking, it's going to spin off OFI, Olam Food Ingredients. And so it's got a $1.75 billion loan, right? They're talking about profits. They're converting cocoa shells into power. That's something we have talked about, the alternative uses for cocoa. I mean, the idea of taking cocoa shells and burning them either for power or for heat is something that the industry has been doing for a long, long time. I don't know why this is news, but apparently it is. But you get an idea is that, there's nothing in the news, nothing in confectionery news about this particular topic, which is now, about a week old. If we go to the magazine Kennedy's Confections, what we'll do, so again, a big industry trade magazine out of the UK, we'll find that they actually haven't posted anything about Olam in quite some time. I think that the most recent article appears to be October 26, 2021. So they're behind the times. They're not covering Olam as a company very closely. Kind of interested and wondering why, but they don't appear to be doing so. But there's nothing in Kennedy's Confections about this. I think they're having their annual chocolate conference this month or early next month. So it'll be interesting to see if it's on the agenda. I don't know if it is, but I will go take a look at it to see if it's on the agenda. I took a look. This is, candy industry, BNP Media, candy industry. And when I'm, so they've rebranded to Snack Food and Wholesale Bakery, but you go there to candyindustry.com. Yep, nope, they've snackandbakery.com when you go and do the search. What you'll do is you'll find that they've posted as recently as the 5th of September. Again, they're talking about connection and flavor trends, the Cocoa and Forest Initiative. Somehow, either Olam or OFI are involved in this article in some way. Again, we have this OFI turning shells into fuel. We don't find anything related to Olam and what's going on in Nigeria. If we go to, this is a magazine I write for, International Confectionery. I'm their technical editor. I've been the technical editor for over 2 years now. And I just did a quick look at Olam, and this is not something that they have talked about. So one of the reasons why I was why I encouraged myself, one of the reasons why I wanted to put this stake in the ground is that none of the other media which are associated with the industry appear to be covering the topic. And I think it's an important topic because, it does raise a whole bunch of issues about how big companies operate and the way big companies operate to, number one, keep farmers in poverty, to perpetuate the power imbalance and the leverage that is associated with that power imbalance over pricing and other sourcing practices. And it happens not just at the farm level, but it also happens at the governmental level. Right, so this is interactions with a foreign exchange policy associated with the Nigerian central bank, and it's yeah, I mean it defrauds everybody, and it puts its fingers on the scale of the market, and it changes everything as a result of what they're doing. So seeing that nobody else in the industry was writing about this, I thought it would be a good idea to go and bring it up as a topic and to find out what people thought about it. So, what do you think? Right? Do you think that about this topic? Does it surprise you that a member of Big Chocolate or Big Cocoa would be engaged in this kind of practices, or either at the central bank level or down at the farm level? What do you think we might do? What do you think that an equitable remedy might be if they go to court and they're proven, I don't know if it's civil or criminal in this particular case, they're either proven guilty or they're proven liable, depending upon whether it's a criminal or civil case, and what the equitable remedies might be for doing this. Would we expect the $30 billion of illegal profits would be disgorged and returned back to the Nigerian central bank? How would that money be dispersed to cocoa farmers, to other aspects of the Nigerian cocoa economy? Who would be in charge of taking care of overseeing what's going on? I'm really curious to know what people think about, number one, the story, their thoughts about the company. Does it confirm suspicions? Do you think that, it's an outlier? What do you think about the whole topic? Does it make sense that I'm even bringing it up? I'm curious to know. This is something that you know, over the especially since lockdowns started happening, the pandemic back in March, April of 2020, that the issue about how to solve some of these problems, part of it is a technological platform, and part of it is how do we address the social and other issues that have become more and more interesting to me, and trying to find strategies for addressing these issues is something that has increasingly occupied more and more and more of my time. But this is something I want to know as a member of the Chocolate Life, as somebody who's reading or participating in the Chocolate Life Live. What do you think about this whole topic? Let me know in the comments. You can go into the live chat or into the comments on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, and put it in the comments. It'll show up here in the studio, and what I can do is I can get it up on the screen. I can try to answer the question, respond to it however I can, and give you a quick shout out and say thank you very much for participating in the live stream. So we're coming up on the halfway point of today's live stream. What I want to do, and you'll see it scrolling across the bottom of the screen, is I want to thank all of the members of the Chocolate Life, right? Because they're the ones who make the Chocolate Life Live possible. So thank you very much to everybody. You're the sponsors for this episode and for every episode of the Chocolate Life Live. If you're not currently a member, what you can do is you can go to the Chocolate Life. I'm logged in, so you can see that it says account here, but if you're not logged in, it will say join. And you can either click that or this little icon down here, it's my avatar. You can go click join and become a member. There's a free level. There's always been a free level since the Chocolate Life started in 2008. But I don't do Patreon. I'm not running ads. I'm not, asking you for any other kind of support other than to become a member of the Chocolate Life. Oh, and also, of course, if you are watching this on YouTube, to like the Chocolate Wire channel, subscribe to it, like the video, and sign up for notifications. And if you can, share it with your friends and spread the word about what it is that we are doing here. I think it's really, really important. I think it's really, really important. And I suppose this is, what it is that I want to hear from you, that I think it's really, really important to take a look at issues like this one. There aren't a whole lot of other writers, bloggers, news outlets that are covering topics like this. And again, I think it's important to do so. They are, part of the unpleasant underbelly, part of the reality of the world we live in. It's part of the unpleasant reality of the cocoa and chocolate business. But if we're not going to address it head on, we run into these kinds of things are going to continue to happen over a very, very long period of time. These things are going to continue to happen in the future, right? And if they're not addressed properly, the challenges that they represent, the consequences of this behavior having to do with keeping farmers in poverty, to keep to not fully address issues associated with deforestation, reforestation, climate change, and all that kind of stuff. It just makes all of these things much, much harder to deal with. And that leads me to the next bit of something. Yeah, no, actually, before we go there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to look. So number one is that there is a magazine or newspaper in Nigeria called the Daily Nigerian. What you can do is you can click on this link, and yay, I was able to fix this opening up in the wrong windows from last week. What we can do is we can find that the Nigerian secret police, this is the state security services, Olam and 10 subsidiaries for a multi-billion-dollar forex fraud. And so you can come down here. Unfortunately, I don't know why. Why it's because I'm looking this at a much smaller, narrow window that the site is not responsive. But what you can do is you can go take a look at this and get some more detail about this. Not from me, but this is one of the sources that I used in order to prepare for this episode of the Chocolate Life Live. So this is another article which also appeared in the Daily Nigerian. I believe it's the next day, and it talks about the bail bond, which is used to secure the release of a Nigerian director. We'll find, again, sorry about this. It's the way the website is coded, but you can learn more about that as well. You can find the names of the people who are involved. And so I did a little math. So if you look at 1 billion naira, what that looks, at least from Tuesday, that was 1.3 million US dollars, more or less. So again, to fully report on this, Olam denies reports of the fraud. They say, hey, so this is from Reuters, as you can see. Olam denies the report, but you can see that their shares did take a dive on the Singapore Stock Exchange. Right, and there are two different reports of this, one from Reuters and one from Bloomberg. I also thought it was interesting to take another point out of The Guardian wrote an article about Olam's legacy in Nigeria. and talking about the gap between recent allegations against Olam and the reality of the firm's, the reality, quote unquote, reality of the firm's unwavering commitment to Nigeria. Well, I would say that if the allegations are true, then that unwavering commitment has also been woke washing or greenwashing, right? Not an actual ongoing commitment to Nigeria. So I just wanted to put that out there. I did not, I don't know what the background of the author is of this article in The Guardian, but I think that the way this headline is written is that they're siding with Olam on this, because using the phrase "the reality of the firm's unwavering commitment" makes a judgment about the company. And it's an interesting read to find some third party who's not necessarily someone who knows a lot about the cocoa industry to go and talk about who talks about um, this particular story. And again, what we're doing is we're finding, here's an official statement. The Charlton Media Group appears to be one of the PR companies for Olam Agri. You can find out what it, you can go and say, oh, go read the Charlton Media Group post about refuting this, and then go look at the Bloomberg and Reuters and find out if there's any overlap in terms of the language being used. That's a technique that I use to find out how the story is propagating, and are news outlets actually doing any of their own research, or are they just reporting the news more or less straight out of the quote unquote, they're reporting press releases or they're reporting the news. So go take a look at that. It's really, really interesting to do that. It's a great technique to be able to figure things out. And then we have this this story from Business Day in Nigeria, which talks about the change in stock price, which happened as a result of this, and how it's, right, it's the largest, one-day decline in nearly 5 years. I thought it would be also great to go and give you a link to Olam's website, so you can go and find out information about them. I'm also linked to the Wikipedia page, so you can go find out what's there. I mean, the Wikipedia page will, if you look at the snapshot column, which is here, what you can do is you can find little things like who are the biggest holders, Temasek and Mitsubishi Corporation. You can find last turnover, the stock exchange symbol that they trade under, bunch of other information that's really, really useful, and some history. And so, when I wrote the article, I actually took part of this history paragraph and put it into the post on the Chocolate Life. But you can learn more about them. There's a lot of stuff here. And the allegations, this page has not been updated. I do not believe, no, this page has not been updated to include any of the recent allegations about a fraud, a foreign exchange fraud. So we'll see if it does in the future. Anyway, so we've got this Wikipedia. I also thought it was interesting. I went and looked to see if I could find out who the directors of Olam were and find a little bit about their history and background. There's a list of wealthy people of ethnic Indian descent who are living in Singapore. And here's what we'll do. Here's where we find out that Olam Group comes from this 150-year-old Chiang family empire, which is Keo Oram Chiang Group, and what they're doing. So a little bit of information about that. And the last link on this, I think, is really, really important to note. And that is that Olam is a member, or not Olam International or Olam Group, but OFI, Olam Food Ingredients. By the way, they like to be called OFI. They don't like to be called OFI. I made that mistake when I was at a chocolate festival in Brazil last summer. I went to the Olam booth, called it OFI, and they're very, very sensitive about that. Don't know quite why I brought up that. It's sort of off topic. But OFI is a member of the World Cocoa Foundation, right? And I don't see anything published by the World Cocoa Foundation which talks about one of its members being accused of financial fraud. And I think that this is a place, I would hope that this is a place where the World Cocoa Foundation would come forward and say, if, the allegations have yet to be proven true, but if they are proven true, this behavior is reprehensible, and OFI needs to be held accountable, and we are going to kick them out of the World Cocoa Foundation. If the allegations are true, they are no longer a member of the World Cocoa Foundation. I would hope that ICCO, the International Cocoa Organization, if there is any official relationship with OFI, OLAM in general and OFI in particular, that there be some consequences which are leveled against them by um, 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 the International Cocoa Organization. We have this organization headquartered out of London called the Federation of Cocoa Commerce, that there should be some action that the FCC takes against OFI. My understanding is that almost all of the cocoa that is traded out of West Africa, so specifically the four countries, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, and Cameroon, together they're the four largest exporters of cocoa out of that part of the world. Almost all of that cocoa is transported under FCC rules, Federation of Cocoa Commerce rules, and contracts. And I have in the past dealt with, as a consultant, in an action that was related to cocoa, which was um, partially destroyed in the process of shipping, and I had to learn about the FCC rules associated with how cocoa needs how cocoa needs to be exported, the rules associated with container dressing and inspection, and then also with respect to what the rules are when the container arrives at the destination port. So I became familiar with FCC rules. Because the FCC is in fact so important when it comes to exporting cocoa out of the region, that I believe that the FCC could take some action against Olam. But I have yet to see anybody respond to this. And I think that, World Cocoa Foundation, if, again, you owe it to the rest of the world as a part of the work you're doing to be able to come and take a stand. You could certainly defend Olam or OFI, until the allegations are proven true. They're just allegations. But should they be proven to be true, or even if they don't prove it, if this is unacceptable behavior, and then what are you going to do? What is the World Cocoa Foundation going to do in terms of ensuring that its members don't perpetrate anything like this going forward? And I would think that World Cocoa Foundation, whoever the president is right now, and the board of directors, that if Olam is in fact either convicted or found liable, criminally convicted or found civilly liable for this, that what you do is you immediately kick them out of the World Cocoa Federation, or the World Cocoa Foundation. They don't belong as a member. That would be my counsel for what it is that's going on. Anyway, that's that. So real quick notice from Mark at Blue Spruce. Possible $50 billion fraud, if true, huge. Yeah, so let's think about it. We've got 5 million metric tons at, let's say, $3,000 a ton. That's just $15 billion. I mean, when you think about it, 5 million metric tons at 3,000 a ton is just $15 billion. That would be the rough value of all the cocoa exported in 2022, right? And so what we're looking at is a foreign exchange fraud. Obviously, something that is taking place over the course of multiple years, at least 5, I believe, if I remember correctly. It could be longer, but at least 5. That $50 billion represents, more than 3 times the annual total value of cocoa at the first point of sale. So at the port of export, which is just stunning in terms of its magnitude as far as I'm concerned. Mark goes on to say, so this I didn't know. Mr. Kant, the director of corporate affairs Corporate and Legal Affairs at Olam Nigeria was reported by the newspaper to spend days in an SSS detention facility in Abuja. Abuja, by the way, is the capital of Cross River State. It is formally actually the capital of Nigeria. Before the capital was moved to Lagos, Abuja was the capital of Nigeria. And so this is interesting. But what we're doing is we're finding that, if Mark, what you could do is you could send me the URL to this particular one story, Straits Times, maybe in Singapore, or maybe in Nigeria. If you could send me the URL to this, I just put it into the chat. What I will do is I will copy it and put it into put the link into the post on the Chocolate Life. So I'll add it down here to news, what's going on. So yeah, no, this is important to note that in fact, the Nigerian government, the State Security Service, the central bank, are really, really taking this seriously, and hopefully what they will do. I'm hoping it go. Would it go to trial? I kind of doubt it. But it would be interesting to see how the settlement agreement and the consent decree would be structured, and if there is going to be follow-on investigation with other companies in Nigeria, and then to see if the regional governments, especially Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Cameroon, follow on and do additional kinds of additional investigations to find out if there's anything similar to this that has happened in those countries. But yeah, Mark, thanks for taking a look at that. I've been focused on taking a look at other sources of information for this and taking some slightly different angles on it. So yeah, please, share that information. I would really like to know. But if you don't, I'll go take a look at it. I just want to let everybody know. As I use, Google Alerts. I don't have a Google, so these are some of my alerts. I don't have a Google alert on Olam. I'm going to set a Google alert up on Olam very, very shortly, and so that if there is any news which gets published, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a notification of it, and I can include it in the story here. Now, so this is sort of, and I'm sorry, I'm sitting back and relaxing sort of in exasperation. So this is another article which appeared in Confectionery News this week. So it actually showed up yesterday, and one of the huge challenges facing the industry is the new EU deforestation regulation, so the EUDR compliance, and there's a whole lot of work being done around supply chain of custody, traceability, chain of custody. And so this group ICE, it's not the International Cocoa Exchange. Yes, it is. It's an international commodities exchange. So ICE has announced that they're going to be offering a service associated with a particular software vendor by the name of Meridi, I believe. You can go and take a look at what it is that they're doing. I wonder, right, because this is an area that I've been researching for a couple of years. I sort of wonder to what extent a chain of custody platform like this might be used for monitoring price compliance. Sort of, this, we know where the cocoa came from. We know how much money was spent at what particular time. And so what we're going to do is we're going to be generating independent reports that, for example, the Nigerian central bank could use. That would be able to let them know what the actual transaction volume was and what their expected revenue should be from foreign exchange, trying to move the money. So the idea being here is that, in the 1980s, the Nigerian central bank and the Nigerian government changed their foreign exchange policy. And what it did is it became very, very difficult to just export hard currency, just export currency out of Nigeria to foreign countries. So what companies like Olam were required to do was they were required to spend the money that they got in country on something else and export that other thing. So they could spend it on cashews, they could spend it on cocoa, they could spend it on cashew nuts, they could spend it on other agricultural commodities and export the agricultural commodities. And so there would be, there was not the direct export of cash. And so could a chain of custody platform, if it were to generate an independent chain of custody platform, if it were to be able to generate these independent reports about transactions and prices and when it happened and who the buyer is and who the seller was and all that kind of information. Could they be used not just for deforestation regulation compliance, but could they be used to help reduce the likelihood that large-scale fraud, like the one that Olam is alleged to have been engaged in, that the likelihood of those kinds of frauds could be eliminated, especially if this is happening, again, if this is the International Commodities Exchange and it's not actually being run by an entity within the Nigerian government for which there is the possibility of some sort of coercion. It'd be interesting to note. I mean, again, this is something I've been thinking of. The chain of custody becomes a basis for doing lots of interesting things, and this is an interesting thing that I think that now that we've seen, what it is, now that we find the situation that we're in, where Olam is a potential being investigated for potential financial fraud, are these things that could be done. Yeah, it's part of UADR, the EUDR, but are there other ways that are there other uses for which this information can be put? And part of this for me is based on the fact that I've learned that, for example, in Ecuador, every commercial transaction that is sort of, you might put on a business transaction, you might put on a tax return, for example, has a receipt. And every single one of these receipts has an individual number. And there is a registry that you can go into and you can say, I have the receipt, tell me all the information about the transaction. And so, for example, if you're purchasing cocoa in Ecuador, one of the things that you could ask your supplier to do is to show me the transaction receipts. So that I can go into the registry and look them up, or you go and take screenshots or otherwise of the transaction receipts, so I can see you bought X amount of cocoa on this date at this price, and so I have independent verification because these are things that are going to go in your tax records. So could we do something like this in cocoa more generally? I mean, would that be a good thing? Many people might say it's Big Brother. Maybe it creates a burden which is too big, a financial burden which is too big, and therefore would negatively influence things. But $50 billion over the is a lot of money, and that's just one company in one country over the course of a number of years. So what is the scale that it is we're talking about? That $50 billion would go a long way towards helping lift farmers in Nigeria out of poverty. And instead, what it's doing is going to, the Singaporean Government Investment Fund, or Temasek Holdings, or it's going to Mitsubishi Corporation, it's going to the other shareholders and investors in Olam, right? And it's not being used to benefit the Nigerian economy in the ways that were envisioned. So I think it's a really, really interesting question to ask, because people tend to be looking at, the EUDR compliance is not in any way linked to, I don't think so. Is this Meridia? I think that's the name of the company. Yeah, so is this Meridia database going to be used in any way to help keep track of, for example, illegal child labor? Illegal child labor, right? So what we do is we have two entirely different data structures and databases which appear to be siloed, or to likely be siloed. Will the data be shared? With whom if the data is shared, with whom will it be shared? Is it going to, go up to ICO and then sort of be washed and laundered? I don't mean that in a negative sense, but washed and put together at ICCO. I mean, it's a really, really interesting challenge, and I think it represents an opportunity, which is one of the reasons why I'm bringing it up here. Um, and so we find, right, this, this is a point that I just brought up. Who's going to pay? Right? So, right, the EU deforestation regulation could create a two-tier market. Again, this is from Confectionery News, so I don't actually think that they did any independent reporting on this. I don't think they actually did any independent fact-checking or research on this. That's not my experience with the way these articles get written, that there is, in fact, um, there is a press release or somebody has contacted them and they're reporting that rather than doing independent research. But it is a really, really interesting question: is who's going to pay, right? An APAC might be the Asia Pacific Cocoa Association, right? Um, and so, really, really interesting to think about. Yeah, so who's going to pay for this? In the end, we all know who's going to pay for it. We know who's going to pay for it. The farmers are going to pay for it, and the consumers are going to pay for it. And the people in the middle are going to find a way to be able to leverage their position and, if not make money off it, not lose money off it. So this is, follow the money, really, really important thing, but we tend to be looking at these things as independent challenges. So, what is the International Cocoa Initiative doing independently of the Cocoa and Forest Initiative, and how is that different from what Be Slavery Free is doing with their chocolate scorecard compared to what the Voice Network is doing? All of this stuff exists in different places. The numbers are slightly different, the attitudes are slightly, it's just a real mess, because what people are doing is they're looking at trying to address the issues independently, and not really from understanding that they're all related. So, this is a really, 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 really good question, right? That we should all be asking. Who is paying for this? And the only thing I know for sure is that it's going to be you and me, chocolate fans around the world. And it's also going to be the cocoa farmers. They're going to be the ones who are going to pay for this. The regulatory agencies, the companies that are involved, the cocoa and chocolate companies are involved, are going to push off all of the costs associated with this. And this is a larger problem associated with extractive economics, where what we're doing is we're taking costs, we're externalizing them. So we're trying to push them off the balance sheets, make other people paying for them. There's a lot of talk right now about companies having to report about risk. This is part of emerging ESG regulations in Europe and the US, that companies need to identify risks and then quantify and identify those risks in their filings as well as their annual reports. But again, these are all, they're handled in what the EU is different from what the US is doing, and it's the gaps between all of these things, right, that the companies have exploited, right, in order to be able to take advantage of them. And so I'm really, really kind of crazy. It bothers me that this stuff. It bothers me. I hope it bothers you. I find it endlessly fascinating. I'm interested in figuring out what to do with it. Quick shout out to Paul McNamara from Illinois. I believe he's at the University Urbana-Champaign, not Chicago Circle, but University of Urbana-Champaign. I apologize for misremembering if I am misremembering. I think I may have made a mention in the past that early on in my career, so this is in the mid 1980s, I worked with people at the Supercomputer Center at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, or Champaign-Urbana. For some reason, Chambena sticks out in my mind. So yeah, I'm glad that you're interested in the discussion about Olam. And if you do any research on it, you have research that you can share. One of the things that everybody should know is that at the bottom of every post, if you were a Chocolate Life member, there is this member discussion. So you can go and put a comment on the page. If you find some research, you find something which is new, you have an idea, you have a thought, you can put it into the member discussion on the Chocolate Life. So yeah, Paul, I don't know if you remember, I can go look. If not, I encourage you to become one. And I would love to see if there's a way that we can continue this conversation going forward, not just about what it is that Olam is doing, but about things generally when it comes to the world of cocoa and chocolate. And I am going to end this by end this episode. That's sort of the formal component that I wanted to talk about by talking about two things. Number one is that this coming Tuesday, which I think is the 19th, again at 10 a.m., what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the 2023 Craft Chocolate Virtual Tasting. So I know that Dustin Cornett, who is the founder of the Craft Chocolate Challenge, is going to be with me. People can purchase tickets to get a tasting kit, which will include all 12 winning bars from the 9 companies that were winners in the competition in 2023. And then you have to order by October 15th, but then by the 22nd of November, then on the 12th of November, which is a Sunday, don't have a time yet, but it will be in the late afternoon, early evening on the 12th of November, Sunday, that's Veterans Day weekend, I believe, the 11th. What we're going to be doing is we're going to gather together in a Google Meet room, and we're going to be talking, we're going to be doing a tasting of the bars. What I will do and what Dustin will do is we'll put together a series of tasting notes for you. We'll deliver those via PDF the week before. If there's some pairing and other kinds of notes, background on all the chocolate makers, that kind of stuff, which will go on. I'm going to be recording that video, and then we'll be putting it up in a shared folder so that people who have purchased a tasting kit will be able to refer to that video. Now, if you're a Chocolate Life member, there's a discount. If you're not a Chocolate Life member, it's $150 per ticket. You can go and you can scan this to pay, or you can go and become a member of the Chocolate Life. And when you become a member of the Chocolate Life, I can send you a link to the member version of this QR code, so you can go and get it's a $25 per kit discount. Shipping right now to the USA. We will ship to Canada, but we're going to have to actually do an upcharge to get it to get the package to you in Canada, because we're going to have to ship it. We're going to try to ship the week before the 12th, so that we don't run into problems. We have to order. We have to know how much chocolate we need to order from Norway and how much chocolate we need to order from Japan. So anyway, just wanted to let everybody know about that. The other thing that I wanted to, so that is this coming Tuesday, we're going to be having a Chocolate Life live stream with Dustin. I believe that Mark from Blue Spruce Chocolates, Blue Spruce was a winner in this year's, will be there as well as a part of it. So I'm looking forward to everybody joining us that day. The other thing that I wanted to do before we close, got another minute or so, is let everybody know about this project that I'm involved in. It's called International Cocoa Diplomacy. On the 23rd, on the week of the 23rd of October, so the 24th through 26th, there's the International Cocoa and Chocolate Forum, which is going to be in London. The International Cocoa Diplomacy project is, an interesting idea. I think that what we're looking to do in it, and I say we because they've asked me to participate as a moderator and to provide some input on other aspects of what international cocoa diplomacy is going to be doing. But the goal is going to be able to provide a way for other entities that are interested in addressing issues in the cocoa to chocolate supply chain, that an organization like the World Cocoa Foundation or an organization like the ICCO are not really equipped to be able to handle, or their charters aren't focused to be able to handle. We are going to be offering the ability for individuals, so just chocolate fans, to join. Farmers will be able to join essentially for free. Chocolate lovers will be able, chocolate fans will be able to join. And then what we want to do is we want to give them the tools that will enable them to be able to pursue diplomacy efforts, so advocacy efforts, in areas that interested them. So if they're interested in terms of child labor or deforestation or sustainability, whatever it is, that what we'll do is we'll provide resources which will enable members of international cocoa diplomacy to be more effective in their advocacy efforts. We got lots of interesting plans going on, and so I'm really excited about the opportunity to become involved in the organization. And with that, I want to say, thanks everybody for being here. Everybody who's, been here through the entire hour. Thank you very much for joining. I appreciate that. Before you leave, if you're watching on YouTube, give a quick, thumbs up and like the video. If you're not subscribed to the channel, the Chocolate Wire channel, please go subscribe to the Chocolate Wire channel. Share with colleagues. Follow us on Facebook, The Chocolate Life on Facebook, my personal channel on LinkedIn. And we will make sure to keep you up to date about future episodes of the Chocolate Life Live. And with that, I want to say again, thank you, everybody. And remind you, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you are doing it wrong. Ciao, everyone. Until the next.